Welcome back to another boardroom briefing. I am your host, Paul Maskill, and today we're going to talk about something that most owners don't realize until they're right in the middle of it. It is the most dangerous phase of a home service business, and no, it's not the startup phase. It's not the phase where you're trying to get your first few customers or keep the phone ringing. It's not the phase where everything seems obviously very fragile. In my opinion, the most dangerous phase is the middle. This is where I see a lot of home service business owners run out of cash and call it a day or scale back significantly. And that's roughly, call it the $3 to $8 million range, where the business is clearly real, clearly working, and clearly bigger than it used to be. But the financial structure, the leadership structure, and operating discipline have not fully caught up with the complexity of the business. And that's really, to be honest, where a lot of owners get blindsided, because the business looks successful enough to create confidence, but not stable enough to create real control. And from the outside looking in, it looks very successful. They see all the vans, you see all the technicians, the phones ringing, revenues coming in, but it is not a stable, predictable, confident business. So in this briefing, we're going to walk through why this phase is so dangerous, what illusions it creates, and what usually starts breaking underneath the surface. And of course, lastly, what are the disciplined operators doing differently? So the illusion is this: we are past the risky stage. This is the first trap I see business owners fall into. Once a business gets into the, call it $3 to $5, $6, $7, $8 million range, depending on your industry, depending on the average ticket, call it on average $5 million of revenue. Most owners feel like they've made it through the hardest part, the most risky part, the most dangerous part. Because now, like I said, the company has people. It's got technicians. You've got an office team. The phone's ringing. The trucks are moving. And the brand is real in the community. You've got all the Google reviews. So the owner and everybody around the owner naturally assumes we're not fragile anymore. We're established now. Look at all the money coming in. We've already survived the hard part. From here, it's just going to continue to grow. And any issues we do have, more revenue will solve it. That belief is, one, understandable, two, not right. The startup phase feels visibly more risky, but when you look at it, the startup phase really isn't that risky at all. Usually it's maybe you and one other person. You don't really have to do much revenue to pay the bills. And even though it feels stressful because you don't know when the phone's going to ring again, everything is fragile. Cash is still a little bit tight because it's like, hey, we need to make a little bit of an investment. We got to buy this new thing. Not a lot of resources. And once we start adding a few people, it does kind of feel like survival. You get to that $600,000, $700,000, $800,000 mark. Feels like you're working harder and harder. You just got to push through it. But what I've realized, and all of the business owners that I talk to and all the clients that I have, the middle stage risk becomes much harder to see, because the business has enough momentum to keep moving even while the infrastructure, the foundation underneath, is starting to weaken. That is the illusion. The illusion is that because the business is real, it must be strong. If the demand is there and we're fulfilling the demand, we must be strong. But that having a real, solid, foundationally stable business and being able to fulfill demand and be busy are not the same thing. So the middle phase is dangerous because complexity grows faster than discipline. So I'm going to say that again. The middle phase is dangerous because complexity grows faster than discipline. The company gets bigger, but the owner often still leads it with habits, assumptions, ego, emotions, decision-making patterns that were really only feasible for a much smaller business. That creates pressures in several places at once. Revenue's going up, payroll's going up, office complexity's going up, scheduling complexity, dispatching, customer volume, decision-making, just the amount of decisions need to be made. All of those things go up. But the foundation to support all those things is not there. The systems, the reporting, the pricing discipline, the labor discipline, the leadership structure often lag way behind. And the business starts carrying more weight without gaining more or enough control. And that's what makes this phase so deceptive. The company is growing, but that growth is really masking all the fragility inside the business instead of actually eliminating it. So let's get into it. What usually starts breaking at this stage? what I've seen is there are a few patterns that show up over and over in this phase. Number one is overhead gets ahead of the economics. And if you just think about the evolution of business, it has to get a little bit ahead because you got to make the investment before you actually need it. But sometimes we get way too ahead. The business starts hiring for the company that it hopes to become. We're doing 6 million and we want to do 9, so we got to hire for 9. We have more office staff, more managers, more support roles, more spend for that anticipated growth. But if pricing and margin and contribution haven't caught up, the business starts carrying a heavier structure than it can comfortably fund. And when that starts to happen, we actually never get to that revenue mark that we thought we were going to get to in the first place. So if we're at a $6 million mark and we're building the office staff for a $9 million company, usually we run out of money before we actually get to the $9 million company. So let's slow down a little bit and make this $6 million company profitable. Now, what I usually see, the reason behind this overhead getting ahead of the economics, and I've mentioned it before in the show, so if it's a repeat, sorry about that, but it's worth hearing again. If you think back when you hired your very first office employee, they were doing everything and they were at max capacity at some point. They were CSR, they were dispatch, they were paying bills, they're doing a little bookkeeping, running a little bit of here. They're doing a little bit of everything and at max capacity, like literally no downtime eventually. Now, when you first hire them, yeah, there's going to be downtime, but eventually they're working 110% every week. Now, eventually you split that role into 2. So just for example's sake, the most common thing I see is we split that role into 2. We have a CSR and a dispatcher now. Well, what used to be a role for one person going 110% now is a role for 2 people, just using math, going at 55% each. And we've already become way less efficient by making that higher. But we know we got to make the higher because we just can't do it anymore. Now, where we get stuck is eventually those 2 people get a little bit more at capacity, and then we hire a third office staff. But what ends up happening is people's baselines start to change and they start to feel really overwhelmed, maybe at like 70 to 80% capacity now. So now we got to hire someone once we get to 80%, and now we cut that job in half, and now each person's doing 40% capacity. So if you look at, I like to look at it at a really large scale just to see it. For anybody that's worked at a massive company or corporate America, I used to be in corporate America a long time ago. I watched 2008 happen sitting in a cubicle in Chicago. There's so much inefficiency in the corporate world. You see companies, they cut 10,000 people and they didn't miss a beat literally the next day. So obviously now we take that big scale down to a smaller scale. That's how it starts. We go from having one person being at full capacity to 2 people, maybe 60, 70, 80%. Now we got 3 people. The baseline is 60 to 70%. And all of a sudden, when you're at 6 million, trying to get to 9 million, we're really, really inefficient. So our overhead just gets way ahead of the economics. So that's what really that's one of the things that starts to break. The second thing is, historically, when you get to that point, owners have their hand in everything. They're control freaks. They want to make all the decisions, and they start to lose visibility faster than they realize. At a small size, owners can often manage by instinct because there's only a couple people, and instinct's usually right when there's only a couple people because you know everybody, you know scenarios really, really well. And you can actually feel what's happening in the business. You can see most things directly. But at this middle stage, that stops working. The business becomes too complex to run by feel, by emotion, by ego. And if financial reporting and operational metrics are not strong enough, the owner starts losing control before they realize they've lost visibility. And a lot of times when I'm working with clients as their CFO, this is what we see this a lot. We see numbers aren't where they need to be. And then we really start to dig in, and it comes down to this, that if we were paying attention to our reporting and our operational metrics, we would have never gotten in this situation. But since we can't run on feel anymore, and we can't just run on emotion, and we can't see everything and feel everything directly, we get stuck in this middle ground where we don't really know everything that's going on, but we assume everything's okay because we're doing enough revenue. A lot of times when I see these $5-6 million businesses, if they got efficient, they'd be like $8 and $9 million businesses because their closing rate's not great. Call booking rate's not great. Average ticket's not great. They have some salespeople that are just poor performers, but they haven't built the systems, the training, the processes to actually support that person or train that person or bring in a new person. And, when you first start to hire anybody in a new role, a lot of times we just have to hope that they can do what they said they could do in the interview, because we don't have the ability to train them and hold them accountable to be successful at that role. So that's number two. Owners lose visibility faster than they realize because, one, we just can't see and feel it all anymore. And then two, we're not using financial reporting or operational KPIs. Number three, labor inefficiency becomes more expensive. In a smaller business, some inefficiency can be absorbed. In a bigger business, those same inefficiencies get multiplied. Weak technicians, weak salespeople, callbacks, poor dispatching, slow installs. Once you're at that $5-6 million ring, those small inefficiencies become very, very expensive. And going back to number two, if we're not looking at financial reporting, if we're not looking at operational metrics or KPIs, we don't even know that we're that inefficient. So that's number three. Number four, the owner becomes the pressure valve. And this is a huge one. As the business grows, the owner often becomes the person holding the whole thing together. They solve all the people issues. They make up for weak systems. They carry the hard decisions. They compensate for poor visibility. Someone's not performing, revenue's a little bit down. I'm going to go run some calls because I know I can sell this job. From the outside, it looks like this person's being a leader. They're solving all the issues. They're stepping in when the system's weak. They're making all the hard decisions. They're doing all the things. But from the inside, it often means the company is still too dependent on the owner to truly be stable. So those are the four things. I'm going to repeat them real quick. Number one, overhead gets ahead of economics. Number two, owners lose visibility faster than they realize. Number three, labor inefficiency becomes more expensive. And then number four, the owner becomes the pressure valve. So why do owners misread the risk? Owners misread this phase because the company is still producing enough results to feel legitimate. Revenue is there, the team is there, the operation is functioning. So when pressure shows up, it gets misdiagnosed. Owners often tell themselves, we just need a little more growth. We just need 1 or 2 more strong months. We just need a little bit more revenue. We need a few more hires. We need to keep pushing. And none of this is based on the numbers. That's just what they believe. Hey, cash is tight. Things seem a little messy. Well, more money is going to solve that. A little bit more growth. We just need a couple strong months so we can get out of this hole. We just need to hire a few more people. In other words, they interpret this pressure as a need for more instead of an effort for more discipline. And that is why this phase is so dangerous. It rewards momentum while punishing weak structure. And many owners keep feeding that momentum because that's what helped them win in the earlier phases. And I tell people this all the time. The mindset, the work ethic, all the things that we're talking about, if we didn't have that, we would never start a business. There's a reason most people work for somebody else. So that serves us to a certain point, but what got the company here is often not what will make it financially strong on the next evolution, the next stage of growth for the business. We have to change so many different things at this stage in order to, one, not only be financially healthy, but two, then get to that next level wherever that is for you. So the consequences, and I've talked about this a lot, more revenue is more problems. Bigger revenue, heavier business. When this phase gets mismanaged, the result is almost always the same. The business gets bigger, but it's not stronger. Revenue goes up, but so does complexity, so does stress, so does the pressure on cash flow. And the owner starts wondering, why does this feel so much harder than it should be? When it was just me and 1 or 2 other people, I was taking home $200,000, $300,000, $400,000. And now I've got a $5, $6, $8 million business, and this thing is just way too heavy. And that's usually the sign that we have a problem. When the business is growing, but it feels increasingly unstable, the issue is rarely effort. It's very rarely work ethic. It is almost always structural discipline. We don't have a solid foundation. From a bank perspective, this creates doubt because the company may look larger, but it does not yet look truly transferable or durable. So going back to what we've said in previous episodes, a lot of people at some point want to sell their business, and we need a bank in order to make that happen at some point, and we need a buyer. And from a buyer, this creates doubt because the company may look larger, but it does not yet look truly transferable or durable. It's very fragile. It's still running on a day-to-day basis. It's still all on the backs of the owner. And it creates one of the most frustrating feelings as a business owner, that growth is not creating freedom. And if you think about when you started your business, pretty sure when you started your business, you didn't say, I want to work 24/7 and be tied to this business. You wanted more freedom. You wanted to spend more time with your kids. You wanted to travel more. You wanted to use it to build wealth and have excess cash flow so you could buy real estate, whatever it might be. But now you're in it, and the last thing we feel is freedom. So what does the disciplined operator do? They build control at the same speed as complexity. They go hand in hand. They're not trying to go too fast. Disciplined operators understand that once the company enters this phase, the job changes, the leadership changes, how we run this business changes. The goal is no longer just to grow. The goal is to build control at the same speed or even a little bit faster than complexity. We need to play the long game. It means asking questions like, is our overhead aligned with our current margin, or are we built for too much revenue at the moment? Do we still have real visibility into what's driving profit and cash? Do you have a dashboard? Do you have a scoreboard? Do you know if you're winning or losing? Is labor efficiency strong enough for the size of business we're now running? Because when you start to do the forecasting and projecting, you might realize our gross profit isn't where it needs to be if we got to hire these other people to get to the next level. And when we can start to remove the ego, they start asking, are we building this company that is more durable, more structurally sound, or are we just going for bigger? Because you ask anybody, how's business going? And within three questions, they're going to say, how big are you? How many trucks do you have? How many guys do you have? How much revenue are you doing? But if we start building for peace of mind, being able to sleep at night, being able to have cash in the bank, knowing we can scale with confidence and clarity instead of just having a bigger business, things start to change. That's what the disciplined operator is doing. And lastly, what we talked about earlier about being the pressure valve, is the owner still acting like that pressure valve, or is the structure actually supporting the company? Do we have the systems and processes? Do we have the financial guidance? Do we have the financial clarity? And when we start to do these things, that mindset changes everything, because disciplined operators stop treating this phase like a continuation of the startup grind of just more. They recognize it as a transition phase. And that's usually where I start working with clients is, before we go do more, we got to take the time to build this next layer of foundation. We've got to get clarity in our numbers. We got to have cash in the bank because growth takes money. And we got to know that if we add more to this, we're going to be able to add to it and actually make money doing it. So they recognize that this is a transition phase, a phase where the company either becomes structurally stronger, more foundationally sound, or becomes more fragile than ever, and a few bad months can put us out of cash. If your business is in that middle stage and success feels heavier than it should, please do not dismiss that feeling. It may be telling you something important, because this is the most dangerous phase of a home service business, when it's the point where the company looks real enough to feel safe, but not disciplined enough to actually be strong. And the owners who do recognize that early are the ones who preserve more control, preserve more cash, and have more options for their future. If this conversation resonated with you, head on over to my website, thebluecollaradvisors.com. Go there. You can book a call with me, and we will dive into your business, what's working, what's not working. We'll do a financial assessment, all at no cost. That is my way of just really helping everybody out there realize what's working, what's not working, areas of opportunity, red flags in their business. So head on over to thebluecollaradvisors.com, book a call with me today. And lastly, if this helped provide the clarity you're looking for, you're exactly where you need to be. I'll see y'all in the next boardroom briefing.